All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I see everyone. Thank you for joining us. Um, Again, for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, I'm Dan Storrs, and I'm the Senior Director for K-12 Engagement for the Link Learning Alliance. And we are, like the last one, we are doing this today to just have a conversation so we can hear from each other, support each other, and kind of find out as we roll out, as you guys all are rolling out your virtual learning, how you're doing it in a Link Learning context, and what we can all do as a community to support one another and to make this happen most effectively for all of our students. So just a couple of the quick housekeeping items as we get started. First of all, remember to please keep yourself muted. We have you, I think when you came on, you're muted. So remember, if you want to contribute, to unmute yourself and then mute yourself again. Also, wanted to encourage you to use the little kind of reactions at the bottom. You can see, if you haven't used them before, a lot of you have by now. At the bottom you see of your screen, you see a little button that says reaction. And yeah, there you go. All right, Abby, thank you very much for demonstrating that skill for us. So that kind of helps us get a feel for, just sort of support each other in our comments and get a feel for what we're thinking. And so it's just another great way to participate. And also, I want to remind you, at the bottom of your screen is the chat button, where we can have ongoing dialogue of chat. You can put in questions that you'd like as we go, comments. And those get shared out at the end afterwards with transcripts to everyone. So you can share resources, use that however you want. Also, I think if you click on the chat, you'll see, you should see it on the right-hand side of your screen. It should show up there. And you can also click on participants to see everybody on the right-hand side. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. And otherwise, I think that kind of takes care of that piece, and we'll kind of jump right in. I wanted to, again, it's open conversation. If you're coming to this with a burning question on your mind that you want to share, please share. We have some topics that both we want to follow up on from our last conversation that came up, and things that have come up for me in talks with folks out in the field over the last couple of weeks. One thing that has changed, I think I should recognize, since the first time we met, is that a lot of you have actually begun implementing your plans. Your vacations, your official spring breaks are over, and you have been jumping into to the online teaching environment. I also would like to introduce Abby Benedetto, many of you know who's here, who's from Envision Learning Partners, and she's joining us today to kind of talk through some of the things around portfolio defense and student participation, sort of in general. Like, how do you do performance tasks or portfolio defense in the online environment? And I know a lot of you are planning on doing it. Some of you are in the middle of doing it. And some of you may be still waffling a little bit about what you want to do or to the degree that you want to do it. And so I think that's one of the topics we want to highlight today. Why don't we start by Abby, if you want to jump in and just tell the group a little bit about what you're working on.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everybody. And I know several faces that I see here were also on our webinar. And so I'm hoping that this won't feel too redundant and repetitive, but I'm really excited to be here. I sat in on the last conversation, and I just really want to applaud you, Dan, and the rest of the folks at Link Learning, because I think that this is just such a cool forum for folks to share resources and brilliance and inspiration in a time when it just feels like, okay, let's just figure out what other people are doing to see if that helps. So I'm hoping to just sort of be a part of that conversation today. Envision Learning Partners works primarily with folks who are trying to implement portfolio defense systems or capstone projects or anything that are mapped to a graduate profile. And as we heard from our clients when schools were shutting down, like, so what do we do about our senior defenses, or what do we do about this? We've sort of tried to figure out how we can support people by building some tools to help schools pivot to thinking about how can you have a portfolio defense in a virtual space. So I would just love to sort of be here as a resource to talk through that with anybody as that comes up in the conversation, and to hear what many of you are already moving forward on in that process.
So maybe we can start out by kind of sharing a little bit about what you're thinking along those lines in terms of portfolio defense. I'm gonna actually, if anyone, feel free again to raise your hand, which I think I failed to mention that at the beginning. So on the right-hand side of your screen on the bottom is where you can raise your hand. So if you're ready to jump in and contribute, just go ahead and raise your hand. And hopefully I think I can see that now if it comes up. But I'm gonna pick on somebody here. And I think we have a number of people from LA Unified, and specifically, I know it was just brought to my attention today. There was a story about how initially, a few weeks ago, that there were something like 15,000 students at high school who had not been online. And I just heard somebody just this morning told me that they saw a report that said that number was down significantly, that a lot of students have now been online. And so I was wondering if Lindsay or if one of the other LAUSD folks would like to jump in and either comment on how you're feeling about getting your kids online, and then after that, thinking about things like portfolio defense.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to actually push this out. I see one of our teachers on the call. I don't know if you're able to speak, but I'd love to hear the voice of Chatsworth Charter High School. Danielle Ramirez is on the call. Maybe she can share a little bit about her experience, because I know they've been working really hard at Chatsworth to connect students to the classroom.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Danielle Ramirez from Chatsworth Charter High. Speaking for my own behalf, I am working in 4 different worlds right now. As I'm on this conversation, I have one of my children to the right of me. I have 2 children behind me. I have asked for a substitute teacher, my mother, and she gave up and started knitting. So we're in this world of reality, but trying to make the best of it. So on the other end, as a teacher, a lot of it is like this, doing Zooms with our students. A lot of it's phone calls home. We're trying to tell our kids that this is an important time for us to either make it big or fall down short. And so as teachers at Chatsworth Charter High, like, we care about our kids a lot, and I miss them. I didn't think I would, but I do. So sorry, now the emotions are coming out. But I appreciate all of you coming on and trying to be our support as human beings, and it really means a lot. So anything you guys can give us, let us know. And I'm so happy to see people that I haven't seen in years. So this is great.
Thank you. And I want to just say that one thing is, I don't think sometimes we appreciate, or especially when you're in a school environment and you don't have maybe a lot of outside communication with folks, I don't think you appreciate what you're doing, what you have to offer to contribute to. Not just about what other folks are doing, and just the way you're kind of facing your struggles and addressing problems is kind of worthy to share with everybody. So I just want to kind of point that out, because I feel like sometimes people are afraid to share that.
Dan, can I share something real quick?
Yeah, please.
As a parent of LAUSD, we receive Blackboard Connect calls from the district asking us to go and get a laptop if we don't have one. I think you wanted to know how are we ensuring that everyone has a device, right? So we are getting calls, and emails, and requesting that we go and get a device from the school. In addition, a lot of our students use Schoology, and our parents have Schoology account as well. So now we're trying our best to get many parents to sign up for Schoology, get that code, and have access to students' grades and attendance and all that stuff. My 2 cents.
Okay, thanks. Does anyone else, other districts use Schoology? Or what do you use? Do you have something specific they're using? Like San Bernardino, I know there's quite a few folks from San Bernardino. Do you have a system that you're using, or how are you doing it? How your primary communication with folks?
So right now, as our teachers have just come back from spring break, they were off for 3 weeks, one specifically for COVID-19, but then that was right next to a 2-week spring break. So our teachers are coming back, and our main implementation for delivering instruction and connecting with students will be Google Classroom. So and then of course our district, there's been numerous communication pieces going out just for general information and so forth. But so right now our students have been given packets, online assignments while we're training our teachers on the Google Suite. And so that's kind of what we're doing. There are other platforms out there that and maybe some of our teachers, I see Damien and a few others that can talk about specifically what's happening at their school, but Google Suite will be our primary communication with students. And then of course we have teachers on the spectrum. So we have teachers that have been using Google Classroom for a number of years, and we have teachers that are not. And so it's a very steep learning curve, but which we have a little bit of time to address that. So there's so many components going on here in making sure that our teachers feel supported, and that they have time to learn, time to get solid on this. So that's sort of what we're using. And Damien and some of you others might want to speak to that as well.
Just to address what Pam was saying, at Arroyo, and Dan, nice to see you again, but now through video. What we're doing and what I've implemented with my classroom, yes, it's Google Suites, because I had been using Google Classroom, obviously in the past, but I've been doing Zoom meetings, because one of the biggest portions, and we were speaking just yesterday, Vincent and everybody in our actually academy meeting, was that social connection with our students. And I was just talking to a couple of teachers today of having the Zoom calls, having the Meet calls is very important right now during this time, because some of our students are missing that connection. We were one of and everybody on this call who were our educators and teachers, we have it that we're the most stable, usually the most stable adult in their lives that they see almost every day. And right now, losing that connection, just me reaching out to my 9th graders and 12th graders through Zoom was phenomenal. Second thing is I'm a site tech coach on our campus. So I'm having teachers come out and reach out to me regarding questions regarding Google Classroom, things like that. So we have the additional supports that are needed to make this successful into the future. So it's having those supports not only amongst their own staff, because we even have done Zoom calls with just the staff, just as relaxing, where we say no work can be talked on these calls, it's just to relax. So that's another important key, I believe, that you even amongst staff members, you guys, there needs to be that connection as well.
And then also add on to that as well. So yeah, we're supposed to be rolling out our distance learning everything live April 20th, Monday. Like the gentleman said, I'm also a parent, so Google Chromebooks have been passed out. My wife picked up my daughter's on Monday. I picked up my son's Google Chromebook today. So the district is distributing Chromebooks to all of our students so that they can have internet. So they can have access to the information at home. Just so that's what we've been doing to get our students connected, but also as teachers, we've been thinking about ways on how to still implement, the college and career. So we had a meeting earlier this week with Nepris. We haven't figured out a way, or we haven't implemented into our instruction yet, but that's a way where we can get our business partners and different partners to have conversations with our students. So that's something that we've been thinking about, so that even while we're doing this distance learning, and even when we get back into the classroom, we could bring industry partners into our classrooms in various ways.
So, and have you been in touch with them already? Have you started that process of even just reaching out to start to arrange those kinds of interactions?
No, we just had we had a training on Monday to show us how to use it, how to utilize it, how to implement it. So then now we have to, strategize and figure out, what's going to be best for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask to Vince, I see a lot of our teachers now. Hi to everybody.
Hey.
But Nepris, so we had been rolling out Nepris, and we had some face-to-face trainings. And now what we've organized the trainings into industry sectors. So that's what Vince was referring to, is that we've had smaller groups meeting with Nepris to speak about their industry sector and link them to the resources that Nepris has. So we feel like that's going to be a great way to connect in during this time, any time actually, but especially during this climate. It's going to be a great way for our students and teachers to connect with industry now.
If could other folks, I'm going to just try something with with your reactions. You have, I think, one of the reactions, I think, is a thumbs up, right? If you can see it down there. So if you're from another district other than San Bernardino, could you give a thumbs up if you also are going to or are using Nepris as a tool? Because that came up on the last time as well. Are there any others? So, okay. I don't see any others on there coming up. Okay. It came up last time as well.
And Dan, I wonder, it looks like Lucky has a hand up.
Okay, I'm not seeing the hands up, so I don't know why, but so if you're gonna might want to help me manage that. Or
Okay, so Lucky, I'm gonna unmute you if you want to jump in.
Yes, good afternoon. Lucky Bamotra, Roosevelt High School, LA Unified. Starting the week of the 16th, we as a faculty started to have faculty meetings, zeroed in on students that were non-participants, tried to get to the bottom of who needed a hotspot or a Chromebook. So we now have a master list of about 75 students that we either cannot reach or bad phone numbers. But we are definitely zeroing in. Also meeting our students, we have a fixed number of periods like Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday. We meet Tuesdays period 1 and 2, Wednesdays 3 and 4, Thursdays 5 and 6. We do have a faculty meeting every other week via Zoom. We also have pathway meetings and department meetings alternating on Mondays. In fact, we had our first pathway meeting this Monday, and we had 80% attendance, which was great. We are moving forward with the portfolio defense, and at this point, I'm with the medical pathway, and so Mr. Bertouin and myself and a couple of other teachers, we have come together with a schedule. We are going to have a Google Docs posted where students are going to sign in to the time that they'd like to present. We're going to go via Zoom, and looking at accommodations, we are also offering Flipgrid if somebody wants to do that. Then we're going to have teachers on the panels. On the portfolio panel, we're going to try to also have some industry partners come in. And yeah, so we are planning on the week of May 1st, May 4th. So we are definitely gung-ho, and the students, they just know that this is what they're going to do. So we'll keep you updated.
Sounds great. Thank you.
I'm wondering if Lindsay might be able to just share what kind of where they're at district in terms of their Link Learning schools, because I think in a conversation Lindsay and I had last week, it sounds like it's somewhat optional. So I was wondering if you could maybe give folks a little bit of an update on what you guys are thinking around the portfolio defense for all of your Link Learning pathways. I'm not sure if she's still on or not.
I'm muted.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry. Our coaches and work-based learning coordinators, our coaches in particular, have been doing an amazing job of translating all of our resources to virtual resources. So we started there. How do we adapt the rubrics, for example, to be virtual portfolio defense rubrics? What tools can we use? And so we've been creating asynchronous trainings for our schools. We have a call with our principals tomorrow where we'll be getting a more concrete list of who's participating in portfolio defense, but we are finding that every day more and more schools are joining into the portfolio defense, and we really do believe that. And one of the messages that we're trying to push to schools is that this is a really great opportunity to give students an ability to focus on their portfolios, especially the seniors. I really enjoyed the Envision presentation yesterday, so if anyone here didn't get a chance to listen in to that, it's recorded, and it was just a wonderful framing of why this work is so important. To your point, Renita, it is optional for our schools. It always has been, but we do have it as part of the continuum of Link Learning. So our more advanced pathways, like Roosevelt Medical is a gold certified pathway, and they're committed to continuing that work. Some of our developing pathways might be focusing more on some of their project work during this time. So it's a case-by-case basis.
And the link is in the chat box as well, if you want to get that to the Envision resources. Yeah, they're terrific.
And Dan, it looks like Kelly has her hand up. I don't know if you can see that.
Okay, no, I can't see anything.
All right.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, you're good.
I wanted to follow up with Lindsay and all the LAUSD folks on the call, and I think it might also apply to the other districts that we're talking with. I was on a call earlier with a smaller group of LA Unified principals who were saying that they were feeling a little bit derailed by the district's decision not to give Fs. They thought that some of their less motivated students would take that as okay, I don't have to, participate anymore. And so I'm wondering, in the service of Link Learning and in capstone projects and portfolio defenses, what are some strategies that people are using to keep kids motivated and engaged toward the end when and if, for other districts, grades are kind of off the table?
One thing we talked about in our meeting yesterday, because we had our pathway meeting yesterday, and that was one of the things that came up. And for our seniors to receive cords, and we could do this use this for all grade levels, because part of their cord is to have community service hours. Mm-hmm. And so creating a different way of them utilizing these distant learnings as opportunities to even fulfill one of those requirements for that we have for them receiving a course. So just giving them an extra different type of incentive, but something that everybody still can benefit from. So those are things. That was one thing that came up in our discussion, and Mr. Lozano, that's actually Mr. Lozano's idea. It was a great idea. And so
he's so smart.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. So great to have him. So that's one of the things we talked about.
And just to share a little bit about that, because for our cord, they were supposed to earn a certification, which is they can still earn that certification online. So I confirmed that, so this way that stays with them. So even if our seniors graduate, they're still going to be able to get OSHA 10 certified. Second thing was, because they had community service hours they had to do, one of the things that we're looking at is because we, of course, stay-at-home order, we're not going to make our students go out there and do some community service. Instead, are they helping each other with distance learning? Are they helping maybe one of their younger brothers or sisters with distance learning? So designing a point system that would equate to kind of community service hours of them engaging with their English teacher, with their social studies teachers, with the other teachers on our campus. And that can also be applied to all of our grade levels to ensure they are still plugging into the distance learning. Because in San Bernardino School District, we froze grades and we can only improve grades from there. So even if our students have a D or an F right now, they can only, it can't go down, it can only go up. So I know other districts might be different. At San Bernardino, that's how we're operating.
Yeah, I think that's the same.
Yeah, that's a great example that I hadn't heard before. So that's an awesome idea. I should point out, and then Abby jump in, that both Damien and Vince, who are on the call, are part of a recently gold certified pathway at Arroyo Valley High School in San Bernardino. They're really firing on all cylinders and doing some amazing stuff. So it's great to have you here. So Abby.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to respond, Kelly. I think that's such a great question, and we're hearing it everywhere. And just something we talked about on the webinar on Tuesday when we were talking about virtual defense is similar to what Vince and Damien were just talking about, is to have students have a voice in designing what this defense might look like, in the sense of, if students are like, yo, all of a sudden I'm like managing my household, I'm taking care of my siblings, I'm talking with my parents about budgeting, like, that they would sort of have the opportunity to choose whether or not they want to bring that into any type of defense, so that experience can really be honored, and to sort of recognize, like, these are really important skills that they are now using, that they're being called upon to use, skills that are probably a part of pathway outcomes, or, you know, all different things that are already in place in the pathways and the academies. And if the students have a voice in designing what they want to sort of present in any final presentation or defensive learning, that can also sort of increase that motivation or incentive to sort of just like really celebrate some of the things that they're working on and doing right now, as well as keeping them going into saying, like, well, now this defense could be even more meaningful to me, hopefully because I've had a hand in designing it. So that's just one idea that we talked about as well.
That's cool. I think that actually relates to something that I've seen in your materials, Abby, where you talk about, they talk about assets and really being mindful about the assets you already have and that you bring to it. And in this case, students talking about their assets. And I think it's great. You know, you're not creating something in a vacuum, you know, use your strengths. So that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And to sort of honor the fact that for some students, they may have been building towards the defense all year because it's something that's deeply embedded in your school already. And to make sure that you sort of hang on to that. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to just wipe that clean and be like, oh, we're going to do something different, but allowing the students to really sort of bring forth the work that they feel like they want to highlight, as well as allowing them to sort of say, and I really want to talk about this thing that just now is evolving. It's emerging in my universe, I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Unless there are hands up, which Renita will rely on you to tell me, I wanted to, related to that is the idea of this synchronous versus asynchronous learning, and kind of what the right mix of that is and how to do that well. And sort of before we officially started, for those of you who came on early, I was talking to Angela from Pacific High School in San Bernardino, a little bit about how kind of she's doing that in terms of meeting with her students, both, you know, live where they can meet with each other or not. And so Angela, would you mind just sharing a little bit about what you shared before the meeting started, about how you're doing it and how you're meeting with your kids?
Sure. Preparing for what the district has asked us to do. First of all, we had to make sure that all of our students are in Google Classroom in some way, shape, or form, because it is our primary mode of communication. We also have communication with Remind, which is an app that is used, that it can make contact with the students, their parents, and we keep connected. Flipgrid is another one of those elements that we're using. It gives the students a chance to kind of record themselves, stating maybe how they feel, and we can use it for social emotional, and we use it to maybe ask a question. The ways in which I am applying both synchronous and asynchronous is that I enter assignments into the Google Classroom for my students to obtain. And I always have, because I give them week-long lessons, I also have PowerPoints that give them instructions piece by piece. And then I record myself in those PowerPoints so that they're still getting a connection to me, getting an opportunity to hear my voice, because a lot of the students they spend a lot of time in the classroom with their teachers. And so they miss the classroom. Even if they hardly ever showed up, they miss the classroom, they miss that interaction and that connection. And then I set up either Zooms or Google Hangouts with my students. I have them divided up by grade levels, my freshmen, my juniors, my seniors, and we have a meeting day. So we meet once a week where we get to interact with one another. You can use Google Hangouts to also set up interactions with students to work in small groups along with the teacher, or in full whole classroom groups as well. So they have some work that they're required to do on their own. And then we come together as an opportunity to just kind of talk about some of that work that they've been doing, to still have classroom discussions. I'm not sure how other classrooms work, but for biomed, it requires a lot of discussion and a lot of interaction. Had to change the ways in which we do labs, and so I set up virtual labs for my students, either using a prepared lab, or they go online and they are able to actually work through the lab. So they're still getting those skills, they're still understanding the elements and the techniques that are involved, and they should be able to explain those techniques and those involvements that they have. It gives them an opportunity to interact with one another, to interact individually, to interact in a group setting. And I know that we were talking about how we are going to do those senior defenses. My students have been preparing for a senior defense since October. And now I'm looking at having to kind of rework how they do that senior defense so that it becomes applicable for them. And the seniors took a big hit this year in all of our districts. They don't have the senior events or activities. They don't have the graduation per se. And so they're missing all of those elements. So it becomes very important for us to still keep that connection, that interaction. They still have to be responsible independently, and they still have to be willing to interact in a group setting. So, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, I think Anne has her hand up.
Great.
I do. Thank you all for sharing everything. It's just fascinating to hear the commitment and the creativity that is being displayed, particularly around connecting to young people. And that's obviously so special in linked learning. So it's just great to be able to listen to you all. And I wanted to just ask a concrete question, because I know Abby was talking about, and many of you have talked about, the defenses and the importance of that, and the way that young people have been really preparing for that. And Abby, love the fact that you talked about the way in which the actual day-to-day, you know, crisis management, family connections that young people are going through every day is such a testament to their skills, and be able to communicate that. Really important. I was wondering if people are thinking that, if you're not doing it already, and is the defense something that should start this year, given that juniors are sort of in limbo land as well, right? Or sophomores, are people beginning to think that this might be something that we should be looking at this year as a way for people to kids to talk about, their learning and to own it at not just at their senior level? And I just wonder if people have been thinking about that, because it seems such a great way to capture and connect even at younger grades. So just curious. Sorry to intrude. I'm just fascinated by what you're talking about.
Monarith, I think you have your hand up. Do you want to jump in? And I don't know if it's related to Anne's question or not.
Yes. I was going to, since you mentioned about the other grade levels, and especially with a couple of districts right now, they are doing what we call no harm policy on grading. They can only improve their grades. So for those students who end up having good grades, they probably are discouraged from doing. Now for our pathway where we structure here in Fresno, California, with Fresno Unified and in my school, McLean High School, which I oversee, is that because we started our projects way back in January, all grade levels, and they just got cut off. And part of their projects is a component of their actual senior portfolio. So by the time to get their senior portfolio, they have to have a compilation of all from their 9, 10, 11, and 12th grade. So, they're not graded. So we communicate to students saying that, remember, this is part of your senior defense at your senior portfolio at your senior year. So this is something as an encouragement that needs to be done. So they say, ooh, because it may not affect them now, but it may affect them down the road. And they've been communicating so that they say that, yeah, they're on it. The only difference now we have to because we were thinking about doing a showcase where we invite people. Now we're thinking about maybe doing a online platform, maybe a YouTube or pre-record. That's still in the works right now. We're just trying to figure out the logistics, the project we communicated that it's still going because they're already halfway through. They just have to finish off what they have done. So we think about setting up business partners, about maybe a group Zoom chat where they can actually, draft their projects and get their feedbacks. And same thing with the seniors, because we do give them awards, we give them honor cords, we give them medals for those who go above and beyond. And then even though say, I got an A already, I'm done, I'm going to graduate. But it doesn't mean that they're going to get the medal if they want that, because the superintendent have already promised all seniors that there will be a graduation ceremony. It may not happen in June, it may happen in August or later down the year, but they're going to walk the stage. And then that's our chance to give stoles, medals, and cords. And if they want to earn that, students will actually participate and get it done. And for our district, we're a Microsoft district, so we utilize Microsoft Teams. And that's the platform we've been using and communicating, and we're building that platform as we go.
All right, thank you. In LA, do you have requirements in terms of teachers having a class session where kids can come on versus a more asynchronous or time requirements? I'm just wondering if there are any requirements or whether it's just really up to each school to figure it out. Oh, you're muted, Lindsay.
Thanks, Dan. Our union just negotiated the minutes and hours in a new contract that was released this last week, basically indicating that for 4 hours, teachers are to be engaged with their students directly in some way. So that looks different at each school. Each school then took those guidelines and created bell schedules. So you heard an example, I think Lucky shared that at Roosevelt, they have a structured bell schedule. We're in the process of collecting those, so I can share those as a resource for other districts. And the teachers primarily do some direct instruction, some asynchronous, and some open office hours are included in that time. So it's a combination of what each teacher has the capacity to do. There was a huge effort that's continuing through the end of this week to try and train everyone on the functionality of our LMS. Primarily some teachers who didn't use all of its features only used the LMS for grading. And so making that transition to be like a full asynchronous or synchronous learning experience for students is quite a learning curve for a lot of teachers. So each subject specific specialist has done work at the district level to create sample units in our LMS that teachers can just adopt. And over the spring break, our CTE teachers started doing that as well. So that's going to be released to support our CTE teachers next week. And then as a Link Learning office, we sent out an all-call for teachers to submit their Schoology units to us so that we could house them in a central place. So if teachers are having difficulty creating their own lessons and units, they can just copy those units into their classes.
It looks like Lucky wanted to jump in. Lucky, go ahead. I'm going to unmute you. Somehow I can't unmute.
Okay. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Lindsay is saying, yes, so at Roosevelt, I'm sorry, in the UTLA with the 4 hours, so we are meeting students live on Zoom and for 1 hour. And then what we're doing is the other 3 hours that adds up to the 4 hours for that particular period. The other 3 hours will be, you know, planning, correcting papers, meeting students. We do have 3 hours of office hours where we are available to, so it's, the office hours are not necessarily a Zoom hours, but they are hours where you're available, where a student can reach you via Schoology and you immediately can reply to the students. So yes, so that's basically, I was just going to piggyback on what Lindsay said with our UTLA guidelines. So we are holding office hours and we are holding class time.
Thank you, Lucky.
Looks like Rekha wants to jump in.
Oh, hi all. I'm also from same school, Roosevelt. Just adding on and piggybacking Ms. Lucky as well as Lindsay, we are also actually having a plan on promoting our senior portfolio defense through the online platforms. So in addition to whatever defense portfolios we have been doing, we didn't stop yet. So we are doing all pathway-wide portfolio defense. Promoting our pathways, insisting the students that this is still ongoing in spite of this crisis. So to meet the requirements, we as a pathway, we have included all the Link Learning pathways within the school to contribute much stress and much importance on why this defense is much needed in spite this crisis.
Thank you. I was wondering if, and I don't know if Diane, I'm going to pick on you, in Antelope Valley. I know Dwayne had to drop off a little early, and so you may not know the answer to that question, but do you know how in Antelope Valley they are addressing that question of like what the interaction looks like, or how much is required, and where that's coming from? Is it coming kind of from the district level or more organically at the school level?
Hi, yeah, I can address it a bit, and I'm not sure if Dwayne got back on. We were both on the same call a little earlier. So from the district level, the teachers are asked to do 2 office hours a week. Some sites have set the hours based on the department that the teacher is in to try and avoid conflict among the different departments, and others have allowed the teachers or have set them just the same time for all teachers. And as far as the synchronous versus asynchronous, it's my understanding, and again, Dwayne may know this a bit more than I do, but that they are stressing that students should not be penalized if they cannot access a synchronous session. So that would not detract from their grade or whatever policy is, participation policy is being implemented. So they're posting Google Meets, doing live Google Meets, and then recording them so that they're accessible by students later. And as Angela mentioned, they're basically doing weekly assignments that are available for a week period of a time, distributed on a Monday and due on a Friday or the next Monday. So we are actually in the middle of the grading discussion now. There is a group or committee that's being convened by the district, including teachers, admin, counselors, and other stakeholders, to determine what the grading policy is going to be going forward. So that hasn't yet been decided.
And just to add to that, Dan, exactly what Diane said, but to extend that, wow. Oh, there it is. One of the ways, I lost it for a second. One of the ways that the teachers are keeping track, or they're keeping track of participation by either emails, responses to on the Google Classroom, any type of communication that the student has is what they're tracking as part of their participation. So as Diane mentioned, the teachers are providing a week's worth of lessons, and within that week, if there's any communication from that student, that's how they're tracking that as part of the participation.
Great, thank you.
I'm Robin Olson. I'm one of the teachers in the AD. I teach at Little Rock High School with the Sustainable Agriculture Academy. And a little bit different on that, we have 4 office hours at our site that we are assigned. We have to keep those office hours every week. In addition to that, we use Remind for the academy. We also have a student organization, FFA, that's very strong, and they're using social media to encourage students and keep them going. And the academy teachers have been working together to continue our integrated projects to kind of close out the year. So as we're looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with the grading in our district, I think that's going to make a big difference. But it's almost a full-time job just to track the kids that are not checking in. So just to let you know.
Diane?
Yeah, can I add to that as well? We have 2 dedicated pupil services technicians for the CTE Link Learning Unit, and they are also helping the teachers to track down students, whether it's phone calls, Remind 101, whatever. And we're also meeting with the teachers as groups. We've set up, similar to what Lindsay said, we've set up a Google Classroom for each industry sector, and we're holding weekly or bi-weekly meetings by industry sector for all of the teachers. And then we're also having office hours for them to check in on days other than when those meetings are, and have provided all of those resources by industry sector as well.
That's great. I mean, that sounds like a great resource for your teachers. All right. So I want to kind of think about, we've just got about 10 minutes left, and certainly if anyone has any more that they'd like to add on that topic, please speak up. Because otherwise, I was wondering if we might turn to just ask again if you have a question about something that came up or you had coming into this conversation, to please raise your hand and ask that. But then I was wondering, so where you are here, what is kind of top of mind? It's 2 parts. Like, what is top of mind for like the next week in terms of, what you're focused on and what you need to do? And then if you have the bandwidth to think beyond that right now, which I would be interested in hearing from some of you on that, of how you're feeling on that, is what then are you thinking about for the longer term, like as you think about May, what May looks like, and how you're thinking about that in terms of, as distinct from what are you thinking about for this week? So I'm just gonna take a pause there without kind of picking on someone first to see if someone might want to kind of just share their thoughts about how they're thinking about it, be what they're thinking, or again, the question of longer term, what are you thinking about that now? Or are you thinking, I just got to figure out how it works, making sure that this week is working? And I'm gonna let just a comfortable silence for a second, and then I'm gonna call on somebody. Diane, did you want to?
Well, I can tell you that as of right now, the district is concentrating on the grading policy and how that's going to work, as I mentioned. Still concentrating on how to keep industry and post-secondary involved. But from a long-term standpoint for the district, we're really looking at contingency planning for what happens over summer and what happens if things are delayed into fall, and how we're really going to have a much more structured experience for the students and structured expectations.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call on somebody. So Laura Smith, I see you there from San Bernardino. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about it, just from your office and your perspective in terms of how you're supporting the schools? Are you thinking, is it day to day? Are you thinking about the longer term? And if so, kind of how?
I think right now, just the conversations that I've had with teachers or, our educators at the sites, they're trying to figure out how they're going to roll this out next week. And I think as, excuse me, the next couple of weeks go on, it'll be great to continue our conversations to see how, because they're going to be modifying and seeing what's working, if the kids are showing up. I mean, I think there's a lot of anxiety and expectations, and they're, but the one thing that we have is, for the most part, many, probably 99% of our pathways, our linked learning pathways, they have those amazing relationships with their students. So one of the comments that somebody said, just making sure they're meeting with every grade level once a week. I think that came from San Bernardino, in fact. I think that's an amazing idea, just to keep that family bond. And then, you have the kids they want to do everything for you. They love you. They love their pathway teachers so much. And so, but I think our teachers have to, stay with that and continue that. As far as long-term, I think the next couple of weeks are going to really decide what the long-term is going to look like. I honestly, who knows? I've been even thinking that we might go back to school in the fall, but then come flu season, they might, if a lot of cases start popping up again, November, December, January, they might shut the schools down during flu season again. This is just me thinking theoretically, but I'm thinking we should really use this time, because they can't say again, there's going to be no Fs and, you can only, grades are harmless. And so we really need to figure out, this may happen again, who knows? And so let's use the time to really figure out how we can make this effective and beneficial for everybody. My 2 cents.
What a great comment. Yeah, it's not theoretical. It's what you got to deal with and plan for next year. Absolutely. Anybody else like to chime in? Okay. And so I just want, Abby, really quickly, do you want to mention that you just mentioned in the chat there?
Sure. I just wanted to throw in that because so many of y'all are thinking about and planning now for virtual defenses, along with the toolkit that I put in the chat, the link to the toolkit that I put in the chat earlier, Morgan and I, one of my colleagues, will be hosting what we're calling just an Ask Us Anything session. That's actually going to be similar. We're sort of stealing your format a little bit, Dan, but a sort of a really interactive session tomorrow at 1 o'clock with anybody who is either playing around with the toolkit that we've designed or just wants to sort of talk and brainstorm a little bit around virtual defenses. So I think I think I have the Zoom link, and I'll try to throw that in there as well, but it's definitely on our website. So I just wanted to offer that as a resource if anybody is available and would like to join us.
Great, thank you. And which, you know, invite anyone who's got a resource that they have to offer or that they've seen that they really like to please share that. You know, put it in the chat or share it out with us, and we'll kind of help amplify that. So
There was a question from Lindsay about a potential idea of creating a repository of projects and units across districts. So that's something we can definitely follow up with you on. And I know some of us that were on a call last week talked about that idea. So we'd be happy to help pull something like that together.
Thanks,
Yep.
Renita. And I also wanted to share that we've been communicating via newsletter to our teachers. So far, we've gotten one up bi-weekly-ish, but we're just trying to update them on all of the resources that are being shared related to linked learning. And I can share a link to the news. It's just a one-page quick one because we know that there's also resource fatigue happening out there. So we're trying to be mindful of that.
yeah, great, thanks. So anybody else? All right. So I'm going to just launch actually a quick post. Speaking of that, in terms of the timing for future conversations, and as you're getting into kind of perhaps a more regular rhythm with your students and your teaching, if it might be better to have any conversations happen a little later in the afternoon versus at the 1 o'clock time. So this is just a quick little, like, give us your kind of feedback. You'll see it pop up on your, and you can just kind of choose. And so a very quick informal poll that kind of helps us kind of figure out what the best time is for you to hold discussions. So, all right.
And Dan, once the poll's done, I'll also put in the chat box a link to a list of resources that the Alliance has curated. And I think we've sent out once or twice, but wanted to make sure you all have that. But it's a list of linked learning related resources and webinars that have been done either recently in this current environment or previous that folks can tap into. So I'll post that in a second after the poll's done.
Okay, terrific. And so that's it for today. One thing I just want to remind people of, there will be a work-based learning webinar, actually. So it's more of a webinar format, and actually Diane Walker, who is here, will be participating in that. And that's on Wednesday, the 29th. And not sure what time, but there's going to be an email going out this afternoon with more information about more details on the webinar and the time. And so be on the lookout for that. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the work you're doing. Appreciate you being willing to kind of share with each other. It's clear that, you know, you see some practices gelling across districts. Some commonalities, and it's really important that we understand and hear what each other are doing. And so really appreciate your time today. So take care, and we'll talk to you soon.